Welcome, everybody. It's episode number 23 of Into the Fire, coming to you live from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Today is May the 17th, 2024. It's police week across the country. I've seen a million different photographs of cops hitting the Facebook and Instagram and everywhere else. Ronnie has completed week two. Ronnie has completed week two of his journey as a civilian crime scene detective. He looks a little smarter. So something's going on down there. I don't know what it is, but good job.
Yeah.
How's it been?
It's been fine, but not crime scene, cold case.
Did I say crime scene? Oh my gosh.
Did.
All right. I'm so sorry. It's cold case.
No, it's
cold
going
case.
well. Just trying to get everything kind of organized down there. The cold case, the homicide books are usually in a 3-ring binder or like an accordion folder, and they are spread out in 2 or 3 different rooms. So I'm trying to get it a little more organized so we can properly attack the ones that are going to be beneficial attacking with some forensic work done, hopefully here in the near future. But no, it's going well, and it's been good to get to see everybody again. So I'm happy to be back.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we had any questions about any one of those cases back there, we could probably ask our next guest, because he's been a cop. He's touched 7 decades. That he has literally been in law enforcement at some point in time over 7 decades. And we're going to talk more about him in a minute. But our coldest case back there goes back to 1968. And that's what I'm talking about. He started on the department in 1969. So he's probably any of them that were noteworthy. I can promise you he knows a lot about them.
And then if you remember, I was telling you when we were looking for some photos on a case from the late 80s, went downstairs into the locked up room. I found a box that has at least the pictures from all the way back to 1957. So at some point, may try to look at those and see if there's anything interesting back then. But yeah, it's been an interesting deal.
I see a lot of the OGs are joining us. Kathleen, I know Rochester's in the house. I can see that she's here. I'll be going to Rochester right around the corner. Actually, I fly out Tuesday. That'll be a lot of fun, and I'll be spending most of the week up there speaking. Let's see what else. I don't know. If you didn't get a chance, well, go ahead, Ronnie.
I was going to say, what do you have word for them on? Because I think our conversation with the Chief's going to go probably most of the time. Do you have anything to say about next week? Did that all get worked out?
Yeah, we're going to take a break next week. I just wanted to let everybody know that, but we're going to take a break because it's the beginning of Memorial Day weekend. Ronnie is going to be doing something. I don't know, whatever Ronnie does. I don't really know what he does. He just does stuff, and I don't really know. But he's got plans to do stuff, and then I will be on a plane from Rochester, New York, back to Tulsa, so we won't be able to do it next week. However, Ronnie and I had actually discussed about maybe re-airing one of our favorite episodes, although we've got several of them that are favorites. But we've discussed that, and I think we're gonna come up with an idea and something along those lines. I want to remind everybody in the KGRA family that there's several other shows that I really highly encourage that you check out. The first one I want to mention is last week's episode of Night Vision with Renee Barnett. It's really good because I'm a guest on it. I want you to check it out, and it's great. Check it out. Go to my Facebook page and give her a like and a watch and so forth. But also check out Wiretap. That's going to follow directly behind us. That's a law enforcement show with Todd Nunley. It's great. It's really in depth and it's really interesting. And then also don't forget Briefing with the Chief and I Detective with Krista Perno. So a lot of good stuff there. Lots of shows. I'm going to remind everybody, we are number 6 of the all-time of all the shows that are on this network, and in a short amount of time. And I want to be higher than that. So let's just tell your friends and family and tell them to tune in, and let's bump that number up. We're also number 1 as far as the alternatives. Hey, Steph, welcome. Let me get to the. You ready to go? I think we should get going. This guy's a VIP in the world of law enforcement, and I want to just briefly talk about his background. I think you're in for a real treat. I watched him on another podcast, and I realized a lot about him that I had no idea. He was actually born in Elkhart, Indiana in 1947. His father was an Indiana state trooper at that time. And in the mid-1950s, he joined – this is his dad, actually. He joined in the mid-1950s, his dad joined the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which I'd never even heard of that. And that is now the DEA. And during his tenure, There they lived in Chicago, Milwaukee, and Madison, Wisconsin. In the early 60s, his dad went to work for the National Board of Fire Underwriters as an arson investigator, and they bought their home back in Indiana in 1962. And the reason why I mentioned this, and he's the one that sent me this stuff, but I thought it was really cool, kind of laying the roadmap as to how he got involved in law enforcement to begin with, and I find it interesting. He graduated from high school in Lebanon, Indiana in 1965. He joined the Navy in June of 65 and served 3 years and 2 months. He was part of the so-called Kitty Cruise program. I don't and that was in which if you joined before you were 18, you got out the day you turned 21. He also enlisted in aviation and served sea duty on an aircraft carrier and duty twice in Vietnam. And I'm sure that was just loads of fun, but definitely made a man of him for sure. He got out in November of 1968 and joined the Tulsa Police Department in 1969. As a rookie, he ended his training in May of 1969 and went into the traffic division where the last class of a police station at 4th and Elgin. So if you're familiar with Tulsa, that building actually still exists. It's cool. It's a really old looking building. And then he was the first one to go to the new station at 600 Civic Center, where we actually are at today. And we're soon to be moving from that, hopefully. He married his wife, Judy, in 1971 and has 2 children who are Melanie, who is a nurse, and Clint, who I know very well because we were classmates, who was a police officer as well. He started, like I said, he started with us. We're going to go ahead and just bring him on.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Hey,
Chief, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here. We really appreciate it. Like I said, I listened to you on another podcast, and it was like I could not believe the amount of history that you've seen policing. You've worked in policing for half of a century at some point or another. So it's really an honor to have you here. Seriously.
Well,
basically, he was the chief of police here from 2010 to 2020. And I'm not just saying this, I actually do mean this, is that you were definitely one of my favorite chiefs over my tenure of almost 26 years. And I don't know, Ronnie, what do you think?
Yeah, so the first 2 chiefs, I mean, I knew who they were just mainly by name. Dave Bean, I think I had a little bit of interaction with, but really until Chief Jordan took over, I didn't really have a relationship with the chief like we did. Cause I mean, you would always come down to homicide and you were just great to us. And so I felt like I halfway got to know you. And then since then with Wendell, I knew Wendell when he became a brand new sergeant. We worked out East and then out at SID. But yeah, you were the first one that I really just kind of got to know, really.
Well, and the other thing, I'm not going to interrupt. Sorry, go ahead, Chief.
No, I was just going to say, it's obviously my time at homicide. That's always been a place I'm interested in. And it's always been a place that I'm going to always give most of my support to, because we've had such a good record for so long of a high clearance rate. And I wouldn't have ever wanted to do anything that would keep us from getting that. I want to do everything I could do to make sure we keep that.
Yeah. Tell us kind of your journey from 1969. I know that you started out in traffic, and then kind of your progression with respect to your time with the police department.
Well, and I tell you how I got in traffic. I'm glad I did, by the way. If you've worked crime scenes, and that's a great training ground for crime scenes. I think I worked probably 5 fatalities total. And that was where I learned how to do prosecution report. That's where I learned how to do, the recovery work of evidence at a scene and the documentation. It was good experience. But I got there because somebody whispered in my ear in the academy, if you're not going to traffic, you're probably going to the jail. So I took the lesser of the evils, and traffic turned out to be a great place. I stayed there for my first 3 years.
I didn't even know that happened when I got on, everyone went out to patrol and went from there. But
yeah, it was different back then. We had the jail back then, we had the city jail. So somebody had to man it. And normally it was older guys getting ready to retire that wanted that duty. But they'd always need some extras, and they'd take some from academy. And it would have probably only been a 6-month gig, but it was still, traffic was really good for me, like I say, to get me used to crime scenes, and it was a good place to work.
Yeah. So you went from there.
Go ahead, Ronnie. I was going to say just real quickly. So you're not from Oklahoma. How just real briefly, how did you end up from the Navy to getting on TPD?
How do you end up any place in this world? Guess.
A wife,
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Go
a
ahead.
woman.
Jason.
Yes.
And
Well, I was
love-
just going to
yeah.
say. Okay.
I was originally going to go back to Indiana and apply for the Indiana State Police. And I actually was working at a Derby gas station on South Yale, about 5100 South Yale. Back then it was there, and got robbed. And the detective was a guy named Dick Campbell, who was a kind of an infamous detective, or famous detective. He really was good in our department. And he said, asked me if I was interested in policing. And I said, yeah, I think I'm going to go back and join the Indiana State Police. He said, no. Come on down here. You can come to Tulsa and join TPD. And so in March I did.
Okay.
So I'm
Yeah,
glad
and
I-
I'm sure police. Well, I'm sure policing was a much different animal back then, to some extent.
You know, there's an amazing number of similarities between what was going on in 1969 and what's going on now in this country. Everything from, civil disturbance to people not being happy with the police, and they didn't talk about defunding back then. They just did it.
Yeah.
So, like I say, there's a lot of similarities. This stuff tends to go in cycles.
Yeah, well, let's hope we're on the upswing. And of course,
Yeah.
we always kind of hit major moments in time, from Rodney King to, whatever else happens, that Minneapolis situation, et cetera. But hopefully we're coming on up in our world. So you went from there, you worked the streets. I read something about how you got into a foot pursuit with an armed robber. That was like was that your first day or something like that?
First shift, yeah. Had a armed robbery right out east, which you guys know where it is. It's the Admiral. It used to be a quick trip at Admiral in Pittsburgh. And they said he went north on Pittsburgh. And I knew Tulsa well enough from my rookie training. I went, well, they're going to get to Independence, so they're probably going to come out either east or west on Independence. Well, I got to Independence in Yale, and there was a suspect vehicle, and he ran a little ways and then bailed out on foot. And I caught him and brought him back to my car and got chewed out for not having my hat on. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was a big deal back then. But I didn't pay much attention to it. It was okay.
Who was the chief back then?
Back then it was Jack Purdy.
Okay. Who
Chief
are the buildings named after?
Huh?
Isn't that who the police building's named after?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He was a good chief. Good chief.
And one of the things that you're kind of a historian, and like I've said that about 2 different times, but one of the things that you'd mentioned was something about the guy that invented this sign right here. This is actually one of the original. It's not the original, of course, but it's very rare. And
is.
so who invented this, and what's the story behind that? Because he was one of your instructors, right?
Oh yeah, he was a deputy chief or assistant chief, Clinton Riggs, and one of my heroes, one of my favorite people. Probably did more for law enforcement training in Tulsa, Oklahoma than anybody else. He knew we had to be trained well, and he made sure we were. But he lived a lot of mid-range people as far as their incomes lived down around Admiral, Delaware, and in that area. And there was he went through First and Columbia every morning. He actually told me this story, and this is so him. He just went, we need something here. We don't need a stop sign, but we need something. And so he invents the yield sign. And I'm just absolutely in awe because I go to Kosovo, in like a few years back, and there's yield signs. It's an international symbol. This guy is just amazing that he thought of it and did it, and it's been adopted by every country in the world.
Yeah. And and people, you're probably one of the most modest people that I've talked to in a long time, because when I was going through the police academy, I soon realized who you were, because everybody would just, talk to Clint about you constantly. And I learned right then and there that you were of basically legend status. I mean, you have been involved in some of the most high profile cases that we still talk about to this day, as far as, some of the shower stall rapist, the Brookside rapist, all of this. I don't even know that we name them like that anymore, but it's kind of, what were some of the other ones that you were involved in? And some of these guys are still in prison, right?
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, we didn't name them. The media did.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, of course, the South Side Stalker was a big deal. He's and the two Berger brothers that were part of that. One of the guys is dead. He came out of a Wendy's with a shotgun. and confronted two of the officers, and that didn't work out well for him. The other two were arrested, and they're off. They're going to be in prison the rest of their lives. The shower stall rapist and the TU rapist both will be in jail for the rest of their lives. Yeah, it was kind of an interesting deal. It's, we as cops, we can kind of think like burglars. We can kind of think like armed robbers. We can't think like rapists.
Yeah.
And so it took a lot of real study on my part. And I found out one thing for sure: if you have a rapist that's hitting homes, guaranteed they're window peeping first, if nothing else, to gather intelligence. So that's what we always did, was go out, and we had the cases like that. We go out and look for window peepers, and that worked every time. Of course, I've never laid claim to being a great sergeant, but I have laid claim to being a great recruiter. I had such good people. I mean, you guys know the Bruce Burtons and the Tom Fords and the people that just are absolutely heroes for our police department.
Yeah, they really are. Actually,
no, yeah, those guys were great. And I guess just for the people who don't know, what's like the Reader's Digest of the Southside Stalker guy? What's the story on that, if you don't mind?
No, I don't mind at all. Yeah, this was three people, three guys, three suspects, and it was the main one. And he was, it started out with a paper carrier. A girl was a paper carrier down deep south, around 71st and Yale. That was real deep south back then. And they abducted her, raped her. And then we were also having some robberies going at the same time. Had a big market, Skaggs Albertsons at 71st and Yale again. We had some robberies. The Sputter restaurant had several that were hit by people with the same description, actually had the same mask. They had a pillowcase that was the same flowered pattern that was they'd used in the rapes. But they broke into a couple of houses and did rapes. They were just really brutal, bad people. And we got onto actually, a patrol officer called me. I started a task force because I was tired of it, to be honest with you. We weren't catching this guy, and this wasn't going to be caught by regular means. We have to have a task force. We put it together, and ultimately an informant came forward who had actually done a couple robberies with him, but he knew who it was, and we started following him, and we followed him to a robbery that was supposed to be a casing at a Wendy's hamburger joint, and it turned out he robbed it, and that was a mistake on his part when he came out. And of course, we knew who the other two were, so we went and arrested them later in the next couple of days.
Yeah, that just reminds me of, despite like nowadays, there's all this technology that we utilize on cases, whether it be social media, phone records, surveillance video, and all that stuff, but still. And I think Jason and I have talked about this several times. It's just, you have to be able to talk to people and make connections with just the community, informants and stuff like that. And I mean, that's the stuff you guys had to do even more, because there wasn't all the cell phone stuff and the videos. And it's
true.
How did you see that change over your career, just the use of technology versus what you had to deal with initially?
Well, we were glad to see all of it come. I mean, it helped us. All the technology did, especially the phone thing. Just our ability to communicate. If I got somebody at the station and they don't, or if I want to have something from records or from whatever, and I don't want to get on the radio because people are monitoring the radio, just having that cell phone has been huge.
Yeah.
The ability to do that. And of course, we've got bumper beepers now that if we have, that's what we did with the Brookside rapist. They sent out they had a special unit. I can't remember what they called it, but it went out, and they stayed on it for 3 days and gave up. So I put my people back in the area, and I said, this is going to be a window peeper. And Sean Hickey, day 2, finds the guy window peeping, and while he's window peeping, we put a bumper beeper on his car.
Nice.
So he's still window peeping. So we followed him to one down by Burning Tree Apartments, and I got him as he was trying to get in the window. So
God, that's exciting stuff. And so that was, you went before that, you actually were a sergeant for evening homicide. Is that right?
Yeah,
is that kind of the progression?
Yeah, well, we got robbery cases too, robbery and homicide, both.
Okay. And how many homicides would you do you remember? I'm not asking you for the exact number, but how many homicides did you generally get like a year back then?
It depends on what year. 81, it was huge. That was, we had Roger Wheeler. We get upwards of 80 cases sometimes.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah, but most years it was around 50.
So then you went from there, and we'll probably talk more about the homicide stuff because I am interested in that. But then you went on to the Southside Street Crimes, and I was fortunate enough to work there and work for Bruce Burton for 1 year. The
Yep.
last year, it was actually the last year of Southside Street Crimes the way it used to be, because with Bruce there, and I gotta have to agree with you. That guy had an uncanny ability, and I know that he learned a lot from you. You know, he was probably like a protege of you, but man, we would have something happen, and he's like, wait a second, I remember something like that.
Yeah.
Let's see, is that guy out of prison? It's going to be him. And he was
Yeah.
always right. I've never seen anything like it. One of the
He-
best cops I've ever worked with.
He was amazing.
And-
He had a great, yes, he had a great memory. Yeah, I actually went from homicide to evening shift patrol, North Side Charlie Squad, and stayed there for I think a year and a half, and then I went to East Side Street Crimes. And I worked there for a couple of years. Then went to South Side Street Crimes, and that's why I ended up retiring. That was a best job I ever had. You know, it was just they gave me depends on the year, but they gave me anywhere between 12 and 15 people, and I could
Wow.
configure them however I wanted. I could make them all plain clothes. I could make them all uniforms, and we always split it up because always when you're in a plain clothes operation, you need somebody to stock cars for you that you know is going to do it right, or is going to stop and get information for you, not burn them. And so it was great. We got attacked. We got to do robbery, you know, some task force robberies. We did some rape things, and just it couldn't be a better job.
Yeah.
What was one of the more fun, I guess, for lack of better words, fun, the robbery task force or serial robbers or something that you hit was? You talked about the South Side guys, but any others that jump out?
No, the robbery task force, we started just because we were having so many robberies.
Okay.
And I put in a letter, try to call it a directed patrol. And we were having, you know, over 100 robberies a month. I mean, it was
Wow.
unbelievable. And they had a Marine got killed in front of a bar down at 61st and Memorial. And I just said, okay, enough. And I put in for a task force, got it. The chief at the time said, well, when he fails, I'm sending him to the dog pound. So I didn't go to the dog pound. But anyway, it was I used a lot of younger people, young rookies that didn't get discouraged easily, or didn't get tired, or didn't want to go do something else. You know, robbery's a funny thing. We always went by the rule: if you're within a mile when it goes out, you're too close, they're past you.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a tendency for everybody to go to the scene, and the robber ain't at the scene anymore. You know, so we made I think we made 183 arrests, and knocked it down to where we were getting 15 to 16 robberies a month, and those were sometimes robberies of individuals and small potatoes robberies. So it was well worthwhile.
That's insane.
And that just goes along with our guest last week for talked about some of the stuff they have and how, you know, you don't want to go to the scene. We were talking about that, and you earlier talking about that Admiral in Pittsburgh, and you went up to Independence and Yale, because I think that's something that a lot of people maybe don't realize, and it's like, oh, well, where are all the cops at? Well, yeah, like you said, the bad guys aren't there anymore. You got to go find them somewhere else.
And what it taught me was you can catch an armed robber. You know, don't be discouraged. You know, too many guys think, oh, he's long gone, he's never gonna, you know, but you can catch an armed robber, and it let me know that, and I remember that my whole career.
Yeah. What year did you retire the first time?
2001.
And then so from there, did you take a couple of years off, and then you went, and then you got, how did you end up going to Kosovo?
Well, Eddie Lundy kept saying, would you go to Kosovo? Would you go to Kosovo? You got to try it. And I said, well, I'll maybe try it. And he said, yeah, come over for 6 months. I said, well, I'll try it. I'll see. I may stay 3 months. He said, no, you get your big bonus at 6 months. I said, okay, I'll see. Well, Americans tend to shine on these overseas police missions. And I of course, never realized it, never even dreamed it. And I mean, they put me in the chief of regional investigations my first second day on the job, actually. And before long, all of a sudden, I was deputy regional commander of operations. And, you know, there's like 1,200 people in the region. There's only 5 police regions in the whole country. And then after little over a month, suddenly I'm the commissioner, a Danish guy, calls me down up to Pristina, the capital, and said, "I'd really like you to be the regional commander for Prison Region." So I said, "Okay." So I ended up doing that. And you don't get paid any more money. You get paid the same as if you were working a patrol in a
Really?
But I had 6 municipalities. What it did do was, I never took a lieutenant's test. I made Sergeant 79, loved the streets, never had any desire to leave. And I found out being regional commander that, by golly, you can actually change some of the stuff you don't like. You can actually make a difference. And so it was a good experience for me. I'd have never gotten chief without it, without a doubt. I still say, I'll always say my worst day in Tulsa Police Department was still better than my best day in Kosovo. I mean, I've been chewed out by Kofi Annan. I've been chewed out by the Prime Minister of Serbia. I've got, it's just it's a hard job to defend these enclaves after we've had a major incident like that. The Albanians did not like the Serbs. There are Serbs still living there in the country. Mm-hmm. And our job was to stand up a police force of 6,000 officers. And because see, when we started bombing Serbia, all the Serbian officers went home from Kosovo and left them almost without a police department.
Yeah.
So we went over there and stood up a police, and it was a great experience. It really was. It was a good experience.
So what was the what was the authority or the organization that allowed that Kosovo thing to happen? Like, who was
it's under the United Nations.
Okay.
I actually had dual roles, actually 3 roles. I worked for the Civilian Police International, DynCorp first, then Civilian Police International the second year. And I worked also for the State Department on the side. I had some State Department responsibilities as well.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. I mean, was it dangerous? I mean, I know there's a danger anywhere, but I mean, I envision that to be really scary. We
lived in the community. It was, you got to remember that the Albanians liked us because we bombed Serbia. So, but it actually came to the point where my second year over there, at the beginning of it, they had huge riots and they burned down Serbian churches. They killed Serbs. They did a lot of really bad stuff. And they had a total after that was 170 arrests, and 150 of them came out of my region. Wow. And so they weren't happy with me. The War Veterans Association from UÇK, or the Kosovo Liberation Army, KLA, they weren't happy, and there were supposedly rumors that I was going to be killed. So the commissioner put a close protection unit on me, CPU. So I had 5 guys with machine guns that went with me everywhere I go, German guys. And so finally, I got sick of it and just kind of walked into the War Veterans Association and pointed to the American in the car and explained to him, if anything happens to me, guess what's going to happen to you? By the time I got to my apartment, the landlord came down and said, "Regional Commander, nothing's going to happen to you. We will never let anything happen to you." It made, they took the special detail off of me, and it was okay. There's a lot of talk that was just, they wouldn't, stuff they really wouldn't do, but they like to talk, to brag like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you have any like language barrier issues? If you had a translator, how much did you feel like you could trust the translators or anything like that?
Actually, pretty much. I had 2 translators, one for Serbian and one for Albanian, and actually pretty trustworthy. I actually probably, as far as language difficulties, I had more difficulties with the German military, because we would have these meetings and they'd have this, what they call unfixing. In other words, going to turn it over now to the civilians, where they'd have a checkpoint or they'd have whatever. And I was training my successor, regional commander, who was a great guy, Kosovo Police Service colonel. And we would go to these meetings, and monthly meetings with the German military, and it was kind of funny because they would start talking in German, and you just had a feeling something's not right.
Yeah.
All towards kind of the end of the meeting, or just during a meeting when we bring up something that was a little sensitive. So I had one of my German police officers dress up in civilian clothes and pretend he was Albanian, come over and go to a meeting with me and find out what they were saying. And yeah, I learned a lot. And so we got all that straightened out. They never tried that stuff again. So
okay.
It was, like I say, it was a funny deal. The Germans were some of the best police officers I had over there. The Americans were the best, but Germans were very, very good. The military guys were kind of funny. We turned some of my guys, American troops, actually turned. They were going to bring in some sniper rifles from down in Albania across the border. We were right up by the border of Albania and Macedonia, and so we had all this good intelligence, and we're setting up how we're going to get them in a little town called Dragaš when they come across the border. And I needed some more people just for outer perimeter. And I went to the military, and this German colonel says, "Oh no, we'll do this. This is a military operation." I said, "No, I just need somebody I've got my people inside." He said, "Oh no, you can't." I said, "Look, you haven't fired a shot since World War II. These guys, most of them, been in shootouts 3 or 4 times. They know what they're doing." He said, "No, we can't do it." So I went to Carabinieri, and the Italians gave me plenty of people, and we got it done. So,
there you go.
Yeah.
What made you get out of that and come back home? Just
miss my wife
okay.
a lot. And it was going to end. The mission was going to end. It was it was not going to last forever. The United Nations wasn't going to be there forever. So
yeah,
I probably could have stayed another year, maybe. A lot of guys were going to Afghanistan. I didn't have any desire to go to Afghanistan. But came back, went to the county, and had a good gig there. Don't know what I was thinking. I was a captain over the SWAT team and the reserve, so I shot submachine guns and drank coffee most of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Dewey Bartlett came along and said, "Hey, I got an idea for you." But no, I'm glad I did it. I love Tulsa Police Department. It was great to be back.
Well, really, and it's unprecedented. I don't know, has anybody else kind of elevated to that position from the rank that you left from to then become chief? I mean, because you left here as a sergeant, and then that had to have been quite an adjustment.
I've had people tell me that they probably lost ground during their major and deputy chief's tenure. And I didn't make every decision I made as chief. I probably would have made the exact same decision as a sergeant. I think it gives you, that's where the sergeant's where the rubber meets the road. That's why if you ever saw me in squad meeting or a staff meeting, if there's ever a sergeant there, I'm going to listen to him or her.
Yeah.
Because they usually have a lot better sense of what's going on than anybody else. And no, that's the first time that's happened. And I was lucky. I went to Major City Chiefs, and everybody, I expected to catch a lot of crap, because they're all, this is a sergeant going to be, and I don't know, Chuck Ramsey, who was the commissioner at Philadelphia, set me at the head table first time we had a meeting right up front, and that kind of sent a message to everybody. And he was the president of the association. So, I never had any problems with it. There's some people I think were probably a little upset with it that a sergeant would come back and do it. Didn't think it was worthwhile, but you're going to have your detractors no matter where you are.
Yeah, you're right about that.
What was kind of the procedure and the steps that, Dewey just called you up, and then, surely there was still like an interview process and stuff like that.
There was him and several members of the community, Northside, and some business people. They did interviews of me. We had a board that we had to go through.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what people don't realize is that I think for the listening audience, which, by the way, I don't think I told you this, but this thing is listened to all over the world and watched. This is big time, Chief. You have no idea. Is this your second podcast to be a part of ever? Third. Yeah. This is on a whole nother level, but nevertheless, if just to describe you as a chief, actually, this is my impression of if I was to describe you to somebody that didn't know you, you were a real police officer's chief. You wanted us to go out there and take care of business, and more so than anything else, you didn't care. Just get it done. Go catch these bad guys, and I'm going to support you in your endeavors. That's just my impression.
Well, thank you. That's great of you to say. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
I remember when you were the chief that there was, and I don't remember any specific things, good or bad, but just in general, I remember there were some people who had that opinion of, oh, he was a sergeant and then he left for a while and he came back, and I think they were either not sure or a little indifferent. But then most of the people that I dealt with they liked it because it's like, well, yeah, he was a sergeant, he was out there doing stuff, so he's closer, he can relate to us more than someone who's been an administrator for just years and years, decades, even at times, And so I just kind of second what Jason said there. I think that was a good description. And I don't remember anyone just completely just thinking, oh my gosh, this is crazy that he's here. So it's going to be good.
I remember a few did, but I expected that. And that's one of those things that in this job, you get an opportunity to prove yourself very quickly, one way or the other. And I did get those opportunities. So,
yeah. Well, and I think you had people that were, Deputy Chief Larson was probably going to make sure that you were set straight. And when I said favorite chief, I don't want him to get wind and think I was talking chief level. All right. So
okay.
I don't want him to get offended, but no, he's great too. But like I said, he's a great deputy chief to work for. I've really enjoyed working for him for sure. And you got to meet, yeah.
How did Chief Larson help you along the way, if at all?
Oh my gosh, he was amazing. He was extremely loyal. You don't find anybody more loyal. Very, very ingenious. Very just a smart guy. Would always tell me when I was wrong, and that's huge when you're a leader. You don't realize it until you're a leader. Somebody to pull you aside, and go, wait, think about this. You don't want to do this. Yeah, and he did that several times, and I will always be beholden to him for doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. And the other thing that I remember about you is I remember that we had a homicide in your neighborhood, and it was, and I know you remember this pretty well, and it was in your neighborhood, and you came down there, and it happened to be my case, and you're like, what do you need? And I was like, well, I need everything. And you're like, well, I don't care what it costs. Whatever you need, it's going to happen, or something along those lines. And it wasn't because it was just in your neighborhood. That's just the way you were. And that's just how you operated on any of them. It didn't matter who they were or whatever, that you wanted us to be 100% successful all the time. And that's just really something else too. So as a chief, and you managed to make it to 2020, and what would you have done different now, looking back, or anything that you kind of, if you were to be put chief today, how would you do things different now? Is there anything that you would change? I don't really know how to answer.
I don't know if I'd do anything differently. I think I would, getting along with the minority communities is always difficult. And I would just keep trying harder and harder to find better ways to integrate our department within our community, and to integrate our community within our department. That's always going to be a struggle. And that's something I think I did everything I could do at the time. Do I think I was an overwhelming success? No, I don't. I don't think there are any chiefs that have been, and we've got to figure that out at some point.
And you were chief for 10 years, roughly. Is that right?
Yep, exactly.
Which is a lot longer than it seems to be the norm. It seems like, chiefs are usually there 3 to 5 years. What if that's right? I guess number one, but then two, what kept you there so long?
Well, I loved it. It's my department. I didn't come from somewhere else. I felt very much an obligation to protect and take care of all the people that have worked for me for so many years, and the people I'd worked with back in the past.
Yeah.
It's my department, and I love it. And I waited until I was 72, and it was just time. No city wants to have somebody in their 70s be their chief of police.
Yeah.
I think if you grow into it, you become 70 as your chief. If you've been there a while, I think that's one thing, but it's another thing to stay too many years after that. I think people start to question, are you too old for it?
Yeah. And do you have a nephew on the department right now?
I do. He's a canine officer, Jeff Maxey.
I did not know that. All right.
Yep.
Well, he's a beast of a cop. I mean,
he's good at what he does.
He's always into something. Always like right in the right spot at the right time. So that is,
he's always looking, and his head's in the right place. He's good troop.
And I think one of the things that you did, a couple of the things that you did, and I want to touch upon both of them, but one of them I think is when you created the crime gun unit. And that is a unit that specifically, it took a lot of pressure off of us, I can tell you that. And it was taking care of a lot of crimes that, quite frankly, we just didn't have time to mess with it. We really didn't.
Oh yeah.
But that,
Well, I give a lot of credit to ATF on that too. You know, they were such big proponents of that, and rightfully so. So
yeah. And then the other thing that you did, no, go ahead, Ronnie.
I'll just say briefly for those that don't know, like the crime gun unit they deal with shootings where people don't die. So that if someone dies, obviously it goes to the homicide group, the other shootings, and those guys, they deal with all those other shootings. And there are a motherload of them in Tulsa. And
A motherload.
Those guys, heck, they work more than the homicide guys. They're out getting called out all the time. So like you said, it takes the pressure off the homicide guys. And again, it gives, like Jason said, it gives those cases the opportunity to get a lot more traction and people working on them than if it got sent to some other group. Specifically,
you got officers now picking up cartridge cases at a shots fired call.
Yeah.
You know, which we never did. I mean, I admit it. I never did. You know, I went, okay, I probably kicked him into the drain or something. I don't know. Because it wasn't anything to do with them back then. But now there is something. You can connect them up with something. So, you know, like I say, this crime gun unit, I'm going to give a lot of credit to ATF on that. They came up with the concept and they followed through with us on it, and it's been really good.
It's been awesome. As a matter of fact, you can do something else with those cartridge casings. And this didn't happen when you were there, but it's the San Diego method. We're actually able to have a chance at getting DNA off of those casings, which were kind of in the experimental stages. My case was the first one, January the 1st, but it's available to us now, which is really a big deal. The second thing I want to mention, it's the technology is insane. Even since you left, it's just crazy how you know, cameras everywhere, and just the everything is just gotten exponentially better. The other thing that you brought to the department, and I'm curious what your take is on this, is you were the one that basically allowed the first 48 to start following our homicide unit. And how did that come about? And what is your thoughts on that over the course of them being here?
Took a year. Yeah, they came in and asked, and I wasn't really negative about it, but I questioned it. You know, what could go wrong? You got to ask, what could go wrong? John Kim at that point in time was kind of the head honcho, and it was, and of course Aaron McCarthy, and I kind of held them off. I went to the DA's office, and they said, "Yeah, you can do it. Just don't do anything before preliminary." And I really thought about it. And I'll tell you what, a lot of my decision was based on the people that were in the unit. I knew there wasn't anybody there that was going to make me feel bad that I did it. I knew everybody there would be professionals, and they would make us look good. And that was all a big part of my decision.
Yeah, they've been here now for 10 years in July. I think it'd be 10 years in July. And Jason and I have talked about this several times. I've had interactions, as has Jason, all over the country. I mean, I've been on vacation and people have came up to me driving down the road, people flagging me down, giving me thumbs up and stuff. And it's done so much positive stuff for the city, I believe. And it's from people from all walks of life. I think it's been, for whatever it's worth, I think it's a great decision that you made. And I think it shows how hard those guys work. And
you guys made it work, and you guys made it popular and made it quality. And I'll always owe you guys for that.
Well, I think it's really, I think it's really strengthened the relationships throughout the city with people that actually deal with the cops on a regular basis. I mean, and I think Ronnie would agree with me when there's some of these areas that are like the purple areas of crime in our city. Not to single any of them out, so I won't mention them, but you know, if you live here, you have a good idea. And in those particular areas, it's almost like we get a pass. It's like, oh yeah, you're okay.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we like you, we appreciate you, and I couldn't tell you how many people that notoriously hate the cops, or at least have that impression of us, that it kind of gives us at least a little bit of credibility with them, and I think it's built the relationships within the community. I really do believe that. Well, Live PD, I wasn't really crazy about Live PD. I thought it was too much, but it's just a different way of televising. You know, we're reactive, not proactive, and I think that's a big difference.
It is, and and I was. I'll be honest with you. I love watching live PD in Tulsa. I really wasn't too crazy about watching the rest of the cities. I thought it was kind of boring.
Yeah.
Well, I did too. I did like our profession. It seemed like our professionalism on that show.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
interested in how we would look against other cities, and I definitely saw that the communication levels. I'm not saying that there wasn't all-star cops across the country, but I just felt like the interactions with the public were a lot more professional, and it just seemed to go a lot smoother and so forth here. And so, and then also the last thing, or one of the other things I want to mention real quick too, before we forget, you were one of the members on the very, very first SWAT team in Tulsa. How did that happen? And how did our SWAT team, when did that start and how did that come about?
Well, we started about the same time. We had TAC teams, 2 TAC teams for a while, and they really weren't meant for armed and barricaded or anything else. They were meant for chasing people more than anything else. But occasionally they would get involved in some kind of an armed and barricaded or a possible hostage situation. And you got to remember, SWAT teams were being formed all across the country, and so it was a new concept. And we started in '78, and it was a really good concept. I think we started immediately training hostage negotiators, which is a absolutely huge part of any special operations team. If you don't have that, you don't have a team. Everything can't be assault, nor should it be. You're going to lose lives if you do that all the time. And so I was chosen, and I'm very honored that I was. There were some really great people on those first teams, and there's great people now.
Yeah, there really is.
Yeah, I've seen they're getting awards all the time and going to different worldwide competitions even and doing.
Oh yeah, Jordan and yeah.
And so along those lines, there's 2 things I wanted to touch on real quickly before we're running a little low on time. But one is just, again, nothing from you, but just to let you know that how much I appreciated what you did when I was in homicide. And Jason talked earlier about the homicide in your neighborhood and how you were like, hey, what do you need? And as he pointed out, it wasn't just because it was in your neighborhood. There was another case, Jason, I got some information about a guy out in Colorado had some information. And this is like middle of the day. And you happened to be walking through, and I don't even know if you remember this, but we were talking about it, and it's like, hey, we need to go talk to this guy out in this prison in California or in Colorado. You came through and we're like, hey, here's what's going on. We need to go talk to this guy. And you're like, well, go get a plane ticket then and go talk to him. And that was just great that you had that mentality of like, hey, here's a murder that they got some good information on. Yeah, go solve it. So just thank you for that. And then the second thing I wanted to mention about, you talked about with the TAC teams and loss of lives. The last time, maybe I have since then, but the last time I really remember talking to you was at Craig Johnson's funeral. And we were standing outside of the church, and when his body was getting loaded up, and somehow you and I ended up standing by each other. And I was talking about how I got the case, and then you were talking about some of the officers that you had dealt with back in your time and that had died in the line of duty. And I don't want to bring everyone down, but can you just briefly talk about those situations?
Yeah, there was some rough ones. It's obviously Gus was a hard one. I wasn't in homicide then, but I was a sergeant, and I was teaching vehicle stops. So
oh, wow.
I really looked over what I had taught, and did I teach enough? Did I do enough? Probably the roughest one for me, believe it or not, was a suicide. I'm not going to name his name, but an officer committed suicide in the basement.
Yeah.
And
I heard about that.
That was a hard one. That was a hard one. The note was hard, because he was a very outgoing, gregarious guy, and we knew he had an alcohol problem, but we never dreamed, that he.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he went off the wagon, and he felt guilty, and he ended up killing himself.
Did you have anything to do with when CERT got created? Because Jason and I were both on CERT during our time on the department. And for people that don't know, it's the Critical Incident Response Team. And so people who've been in critical incidents, whether it be a shooting, some type of chase that someone dies in a car crash, but for whatever reasons, not worth really talking about, Jason and I were both put on that team back in the early 2000s.
I worked with Doug Jentz. but he asked my opinion on a lot of stuff on that. But he asked a lot of people that. He asked around a lot to make sure he got everything covered that he could, and he made his recommendations. Yeah, we were kind of an anomaly in the country having with our CERT team because there's so many people, you guys included, that made it up and made it successful, and it was a big deal.
Yeah, I really think that was one of the best things. I was able to be on the department for roughly 20 years, and I just felt like you could connect to people and try to help them out, when they're in a situation that they didn't expect to be in when they went to work that day, and and something just crazy happens. So and I think the mentality that from when you first started in the late 60s to now, there's just a completely different look on people's mental health. And how have you seen that change over the years?
Oh, back then, you didn't talk if you got in a shootout or some kind of a high risk situation or a critical incident, and you were troubled at all. If you talked about any place, it was maybe at home.
Yeah.
But you didn't talk about it with people that had been through it and understood it.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm lucky. I've got a wife that has always been sympathetic to, worried about me, and I never had to worry about bringing any of that home. She was always really good about it. But by the same token, it's good sometimes to talk to somebody else that's been through it and how did they deal with it and those kinds of things. Yeah, those changes are huge. We just didn't have those resources to us for the most part.
Was there one specific incident that led to the creation of that you remember? I'm sure I've been told at some point, but I just really don't remember. I don't know if you know, Jason.
I don't know what incident. It was an incident, but I don't remember what incident because I remember.
If I had to bet, I would bet it would. If I had to guess, I'm guessing it. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe it would have. I would think that it had something to do about an officer-involved shooting where somebody died, but I couldn't say that for certain.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I know that we got psychological services because of this homicide in the basement.
Okay, I didn't know that.
That was absolutely Harry Steege's doing. It was a good job by Harry. He's the one that got Dr. Jantz to us and got that all started. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we've got to wrap up, unfortunately, because I could talk to you for probably days. And I just want to thank you. You're one of those chiefs. And honestly, the other thing I want to mention is that because you sent me and Ronnie to Colorado, actually, that did solve a 2007 case. And theoretically, we're on the verge of solving another 2007 case because of you letting us go there. And so I appreciate you opening up the checkbook and letting Ronnie and I go out there and talk to this guy. Listen, can't appreciate. I mean, seriously, you're one of those chiefs that you actually knew I don't know that you didn't know people's names. It always seemed like you knew our names, and that meant a lot to us. And so I appreciate your time. Tell Mrs. Jordan we appreciate you letting us borrow you for tonight, and so forth. And like I said, I can't thank you enough. Ronnie, any final thoughts?
No, just thank you again. And along Jason's line there, I think there's potentially maybe even one more Colder case that can get solved by us going out to Colorado and talking to that guy. So it was a great thing that you allowed to happen, and it's still the good actions from that are continuing to happen to this day. So, but yes,
next week
for everything, and great to have you on here.
I'm very confident to be here, guys. Thank you for inviting me.
Appreciate you. And thanks for throwing my name out to be a speaker. I appreciate that too. So we don't have time to get into that. Next week, we're going to have, no, not next week. We're not going to have any fresh episode, but the week after that, we're going to have Doug Young from the Thornton Police Department in Colorado. And he is going to talk about the MVAC. And don't forget, in the near future, we're going to have one of Ted Bundy's actual surviving victims that nearly died from the attack, but she's going to be fascinating as well. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. We got to jump off here, so Amanda's got to get. But thank you all very much. Thank you, Chief. We will see you in the next week. There'll be an episode on, but take care, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.